Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining. Today we're going to learn about a surefire way to improve the outcome of your data migration project. My name is Laura Poggi, and I'm the Marketing Manager at RTTS. I'll be moderating the webinar today. Bill Hayduck, the President and CEO of RTTS, will be presenting some slides, followed by Chris Thompson, our resident data warehouse domain expert, who will be providing a quick demonstration of our ETL testing tool. For any questions that may pop up during the webinar, we will be accepting them over chat and providing answers at the end of the session, so please feel free to send them in at any point throughout the presentation and demonstration. Also, if there are any issues at all seeing or hearing the presenters, please use the chat to alert the host. Thank you again for your time and participation, and now I'll hand it over to Bill to begin.
Thanks, Laura. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Seems like we have people from a lot of different time zones all over the world, so this should be interesting. Okay, so data migrations, how to avoid the #1 project pitfall is our topic. Our agenda is going to be, again, we're going to talk about data migrations, the business reasons, the risks, the costs, scarcity metrics, and some common defects. Then we'll talk about the #1 project pitfall, our solution, and Chris will do a demo for you. So here we go. All right, a little bit about RTTS. We're the company that builds Query Surge. We're the leading provider of software quality for critical business systems. Founded in '96, we are a consulting service that also provides software for software quality and QA. We're located in New York. That's where I'm speaking from right now, where it's very cold. Atlanta, Philadelphia, and Phoenix. We fulfill engagements pretty much not only all over North America, but somewhere, typically North America, but sometimes all over the world. Our customer profile is the Fortune 1000, and we've had over 600 clients in the last 18 years. And the software that we have is called Query Surge. We have alliance partnerships with IBM going back 18 years, Oracle, Microsoft, HP, Teradata, and we recently signed up with Hortonworks as a nice implementation of Hadoop. Okay, so let's talk about data migrations. Here's some quotes that we're going to start with. From Gartner, the first one, 80% of data migration projects fail to meet expectations running over time and budget. The second one was from an IBM survey where they said 83% of migrations experience problems. And the third was also from Gartner, which said that 80% of organizations will underestimate the cost related to data acquisition tasks by an average of about 50%. So there's obviously issues with data migrations, and that's why we're all here. So why people do data migrations, here are the top reasons. Decommissioning legacy systems, which happens all the time, adding a new line of business, a new deployment of an ERP or CRM, like SAP or PeopleSoft, consolidation of systems, and relocation of hardware software. Now let's look at some scary metrics that are out there regarding data migrations. One is that the average cost for data migration is about $875,000. The second is 34% of migrations have missing or lost data, and we see this quite a bit. 38% have some form of corruption. 64% have unexpected outage or downtime. And the typical cost of a downtime for the two top industries are $6.5 million per hour in the brokerage industry and $2.8 million per hour in the energy industry. And then 72% of organizations have not undertaken data migration because they just feel it's too risky. So to me, these are really scary metrics. So here are some of the key risks that were highlighted by Information Week on data migration. Unexpected downtime, budget overruns, customer or brand impact due to downtime or inability for their prospects or clients to get to their application or website, data corruption, application performance issues, and data loss. And some key cost factors: remediation activities, server outages, application outages, human labor costs, the cost of software tools, and the expense of system maintenance. So again, Information Week highlighted recently the 5 biggest pitfalls of data migration projects. The first one is to fail to engage the line of business. The second is absence of policies and structure. The third is poor data quality in a legacy system. The fifth is neglecting to validate and redefine business rules. And the sixth was failure to validate and test the migration process. So which one do you think is the number one pitfall? It's a loaded question if you registered, which you did for our webinar. Failure to validate and test the data migration process. That's what we're going to be talking about. So, again, from the Information Week article that came out recently, here's a quote from an expert. You really need to make sure that you're validating and testing throughout the process. And unfortunately, companies often don't spend enough time aligning the data testing, validation, and migration cycles to the project timeline. So how are you going to go about testing the data? Well, this is a typical testing strategy that's employed out there now. Perform row counts to make sure that the rows have been migrated over correctly, the number of rows, and then compare migrated records to source using sampling. So just taking a percentage of the data and comparing it. That leaves a lot to chance. So the question is, out there, is there a better way? We think there is. We have our solution, automated testing of the migration process wrapped around our tool Query Search. So what exactly is Query Search? Well, it's the premier tool out there for automating data testing and the ETL process. Query Search does a great job of finding bad data. And one of the interesting things out there is because people are doing sampling, most of them are testing less than 1% of their data, which leaves tons of data untested. And their databases have, at best, untested data and at worst, bad data in there. And obviously, bad data is costing companies lots and lots of dollars. According to Gartner, somewhere between $8 and $100 million annually per company. And one of the things Query Search can do is make sure you test up to 100% of your data quickly, find your bad data so that you can remediate it. Let's look at our architecture bit of Query Search. Query Search is a Web 2.0 interface. It's any web browser it can handle. It has a MySQL backend database, a Tomcat app server, and agents that talk to the source and target data. And all this can install on either Windows or a Linux box. It takes about 10 minutes and it's installed very quick. As far as sources and target, Query Search can connect and support pretty much any JDBC compliant database. It also connects to flat files, XML, and Hadoop. So pretty much anything out there that you're using for migration, we can connect to. Here's our data flow for a typical data migration project. We have your source data being either ETL'd, extract, transformed, and loaded into the target database, or extract and loaded into the target database with no transformations. What Query Search does is it launches SQL at the sources and at the target, pulls it back, and compares it very quickly. Query Search has 4 basic modules. The first being a design library. That's where you can create query pairs aimed at your source and target queries, source and target data. The second is a scheduling interface. You can build these groups of query pairs and run them either now or at 11 o'clock tonight or after an event like the ETL process ends. The third module is a runtime dashboard, which allows you to view your executions in real time and analyze them while they're executing. And lastly, we have deep dive reporting that allows you to examine and automatically email your test results to the entire team. So we basically have 2 steps for our automated data migration strategy. The first is, and I'll talk about this in a second, we have data wizards that can automate the testing with no programming. They automate row count compares and table compares really, really fast visually. You select the schema, you select your tables, and you select either row count compare or table compare, and it's done. It happens real fast. The second is automated testing with custom queries. So you're writing SQL, and any tables that have transformations are compared, and upwards of 100% of coverage can be had very quickly. So again, back to our data wizards, no programming at all, perfect for migrations or upgrades, great for verifying all rows have come over without issues, great at table-to-table transfers that don't have transformations involved, and also great for creating SQL stubs for advanced scripting because it already knows the table names. So the 2 wizards, in the data wizards, we have 2 different kinds. The row count, which verifies that the amount of rows match from the source to the target. And it quickly compares rows of all tables, and it can either be used by a beginner with no coding experience or an expert. Our table compare wizard, very similar, except for instead of just doing row counts, it's doing entire table to table. Again, it's done visually, happens very fast, and the person doesn't need any coding experience to be able to do it. And then we have our custom query pairs, where you write a query against the source and target, and Query Search quickly compares the tables after transformation. So with these two strategies, these two steps, you have all your row counts done really quickly, and then you have all your tables without transformations done really quickly, and then you can handle all your transformations. So Query Search can verify upwards of 100% of your data quickly. It can automate the entire testing effort, which means that you can have it say, after I do a migration, I want the ETL tool to automatically take off Query Search, run a test, do the comparisons, and send an email with the results to everybody back on my team. It can also test across pretty much any platform that holds data, and it speeds up testing as much as 1,000 times faster than manual. So the value add for Query Search is it either provides value by increasing the testing data coverage from less than 1% to upwards of 100%. It can decrease the testing time as much as 1,000 times, or it could do a combination of both, depending on what you're looking to save. On an ROI, you can redeploy headcount because you definitely won't need the number of testers that you have right now. You can have them do something else or test another system. And you're going to see an increase in better data due to much shorter and thorough testing cycle, and could potentially save millions of dollars in bad data. So that's my short presentation on Query Search. Chris is going to take over and show you exactly how he goes about doing data migration testing. Chris?
Thank you, Bill. Give me a moment to share. Okay, so before I dive into Query Search, I just want to talk about what we'll be testing today. And we're going to test two different types of migrations. One is a legacy system being migrated to a new system, and the other one is a technology migration from MS SQL Server to Oracle. So real quick on the first one, the legacy system being migrated to a new system. It's going to go ahead and bring up what many of you may have seen many times, which is a sample mapping document. And in this mapping document, we have our columns. We have a mapping column, source table column, source type, transformation logic, target table, target column, target type, and some sample data. And you'll notice, although very low complexity, we have a couple of transformations going on. So we have a transformation from the source table purchaser full name over to customer dim, first name, last name, with these two transformations. We also have an additional third transformation, which will actually create the query pair from scratch. All the other query pairs have been created in advance. So with that said, I'll go ahead and log into Query Search. When you first log into Query Search, the welcome screen appears. There's 5 modules, as Bill told you in the slides. The first module is the design library, where you go ahead and create your query pairs of tests. There's a scheduling module where you create test suites and execute those test suites as scenarios. There's also a run dashboard for monitoring those runs in real time, a reporting module, and an administration module where you set up your configuration. When you first log in, you're actually logged into the design library, where you spend most of your time creating tests for Query Search. We'll go ahead and dive into our legacy to new folder, and we're going to be working with the purchaser table today. As I said before, I've created these query pairs in advance. the one that we're going to be taking a look at right now is the customer dim last name table. So I'll dive into that. When I first dive into it, I'm brought up with two queries, a source query on your left and a target query on your right. Each query has its own connection. As you can see, we can connect to quite a few different technologies, Microsoft Access, Excel, flat files, Hadoop, for example. In this case, we're going to be SQL Server going over to Oracle. There is a transformation going on, which I showed you in the mapping document. We could also take a look at that, make it a little bit bigger so we could see the entire query. You'll notice that there's some tabs along the top. This is the different tabs for a query pair. Query pair has some properties such as last name, a description, and a mapping field to relate back to the mapping document. It also has some options for when you execute that query down here. We also have what's called the design time run. Now, the whole purpose of a design time run is to just kind of check to make sure, it's kind of testing the test to make sure your query pair is bringing back the results that you want it to. It always shows the last run of that. So the last time it ran, it actually failed with a row count of 7 failures. Brought back 32,315 on the source side and 32,315 on the target side. I'm going to go ahead and run this again. While it's running, it brings back the information for the source query execution, the target query execution, the result data analysis, the agent name, and we could talk about agents a little bit here while it's running. So Query Search can have multiple agents to be able to load balance and have greater throughput. There we go. We'll go ahead and take a look at those results. So when I look at the results, I could see that all the source information, all the target data, and you can see it's all here, all 32,315 rows. I can scroll down through all those rows. The failure tab is a little bit more interesting. In this particular case, I had 7 failures. We could take a look at some of those failures. We can look at them where I prefer to look at them in the side-by-side view. So we could actually see that this particular ID purchaser primary key on the source side had a last name of x.low, or in other words, it had a middle initial that was not transformed over to the target side correctly. However, maybe the developers got it right here, and this is exactly what the last name should be. So in this particular case, we go back to our mapping document, take a quick look, and actually take a look at the actual transformation logic, which is load the target field with the second section by splitting into 2 using the space as the delimiter. In this case, the developers actually did not follow this logic. However, they may have done it right, so this would have to go back to the business to see if this mapping document needs to be updated. I'll go ahead and talk about these additional tabs so you can also take a look at the source query as well as the target query. We'll close out of that. Okay, so now we're going to move on to our next module. It's our scheduling module. On the left-hand side, you'll see the suites that are currently created. In this case, we have 3 suites. The contents of the suites here, no suite is selected, so it'll be blank. And also all the query pairs that were from the design library located over here. We'll go ahead and create a suite. And for this particular example, we're testing the purchaser table, so I'll go ahead and call that purchaser. There's also, you can put a description in here for a description of your suite. I'm going to go ahead and bring some query pairs into my test suite. In this case, the purchaser. folder contains all the ones that I want for this week, so I'm just going to go ahead and drag it all over. Additionally, if you did want to, you could just select a single query pair and drag that over as well. I'll go ahead and save this test suite. And now we'll talk about test execution. So there's 3 ways to execute a test suite. We could schedule a scenario. We could set a particular date. We could set a particular time. And we could add multiple suites to a scenario. So that's one way to do it. Additionally, we have Query Search comes included with a command line API, which allows you to kick off a scenario via the command line. So if your ETL tool has a command line, which most of them do, allow you to kick off event-driven commands, then you'd be able to, at the end of an ETL, kick off an event, which will then kick off the Query Search scenario. But the easiest way to run a test suite is just to right-click it and say Run Now. So that when I did click Run Now, I was brought over to the Run Dashboard. In the Run Dashboard, on the left-hand side is all your scenarios. In this particular case, I had one that I'd run previously, but all your scenarios would be located on this left side. This one is currently running, the one I just selected. In the middle is all your test suites executing and your progress bar. Down below is a graph showing your query pairs as they go through their different statuses. And then on the right is another graph showing the statuses over time. Additionally, on the right-hand side, in real time, shows you the ones running, past, any type of failures for metrics real time. I can additionally go to query pair activity, which will show me all the query pairs in their current status and whether they passed or failed. I do have the ability to filter as well. We'll go ahead and go back to the test suite details and dive into this test suite. In the query pair details, I can see all the different query pairs as well as which ones have passed or failed. If I click on one, I get the query pair detail information on the right-hand side. This is the same query pair that failed during our design time run, 32,315 source rows, and this likewise on the target side. I can go ahead and drill into that, and we can see that we have all the source rows, all the target rows, and the same similar failures as before. Additionally, all this information could be exported to Excel, CSV, and XML. And again, the source queries here, if you need to take a look to see maybe I did something wrong in my query, and that's why my failures are occurring, something else that you could do there. I'll go ahead and close out of here, and we'll move on to the reporting module. So there's lots of different reports you can run in Query Search. The one we'll run, and some of the more interesting ones are the scenario summary and scenario detail. We'll go ahead and run a scenario summary on the scenario or test suite that we just executed, which was the purchaser test suite. We'll go ahead and run that report. Now you'll see in the report the scenario outcome. Test results, in this case we had 13 query pairs, 12 passed, 1 failed, of a pass rate of 92%. The scenario duration was just under a minute. Number of verifications was close to 1 million, with 7 data failures that I showed you previously. And what's interesting is the reliability rate is 99.999, which is just a different metric than the pass rate. It's actually looking at the failures versus the total number of verifications. Some additional metrics down below. I'm going to go ahead and move on by going back to the design library, and what we're going to actually do is create a brand new query pair on the one mapping that we have that was not pre-created, which is the bill same one. So purchaser bill same on the target side comes across to the address dim address type column using this logic. So instead of ones and zeros, it's going to be a yes or a no. So we'll go back to our purchaser folder. We'll create a new query pair. We'll name it similar to the one that we currently have. Bill same. We'll give it a very quick description, and the mapping is 1.12. Save that. Okay, now to save time, I've pre-created these queries, and I'm just going to switch over real quick and copy and paste them in. And I did it one swoop. Target query. Get rid of that line. Okay, so just to quickly talk about the mapping document, had the transformation logic, and what I'm doing here is I'm selecting the primary key along with the transformation logic happening here to convert it to the yes or no on the source side so that it will match the target side. And then on the target side, it's pretty much a straight pull. Oh, no.
Just click cancel. Don't worry about that. So you're basically mimicking the ETL process right here, right?
Absolutely. It's exactly what I'm doing.
So even though you and the developer of the ETL developer are looking at the same mapping document, there's no guarantee that it came across correctly. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So that's what you're trying to do.
That's right.
Great.
So now I went ahead and created these two, the source query and the target query. I'll go ahead and select the connection I want to connect to. In this case, it will be SQL Server source and Oracle 10G target for the target side. I just want to make another quick note that at any time, if I wanted to, if I had a whole bunch of queries, as I do have 14 queries, if I wanted to do a bulk connection update to change those connections, I could do that right here in one place rather than going into each query pair and changing them individually. There's also some other bulk things here, bulk row count rules and some bulk duplicate row counts, which we could discuss later. I'll go ahead and save my source query and my target query and move on to running this query to see if I syntactically have it correct and if it brings back the results I'm anticipating. So since this query pair is never executed before, it shows up as not run. I'll go ahead and run that now, and hopefully we'll come back with passing results.
So what you're doing here, Chris, just to make it clear to everyone, is these are for transformation logic, right?
That's correct.
If there is no transformation, you're going to use the wizard.
Absolutely. And once I'm done demonstrating this particular migration, we're going to move on to our second migration, which will be exactly that, using the wizard.
So somebody that has no programming experience at all probably couldn't get going on this unless they got a little training, but anything without transformations they could do quickly.
Using the wizards, correct.
Okay.
This particular query pair came back with 2,863 failures. So I'll go ahead and take a look at those failures. So again, we have all the source information, all the target information, and any possible failures. In this case, it looks like we have a capital letter for some reason on the target side, but not on the source side. We could just look side by side to make sure that is the case. And sure enough, this primary key purchaser has a lowercase o, and on the target side, the same key has an uppercase o. So let's just go make sure that I did it right and the developer did it wrong. And sure enough, I think it's a possible defect, and I would do whatever is necessary to log that as a defect. I'll go ahead and close out of here. And I'll go back to our test suite that we previously created. And now that I've completely done all the testing I needed to do, or all the design work for the query pair for this table, I'm going to go ahead and bring over that last one that I just created, which was Bill's same. Here we go. And we're just going to bring that over, and we'll go ahead and save that. And then we would just simply re-execute it. So that's that one. We're not going to spend some more time watching this thing run. We'll just move on to our second migration, which is going from MS SQL Server to Oracle. And we're going to go ahead and use the data wizard for that. So I'm just going to go back to the design time library, go ahead and click and launch the data wizard. We get a nice welcome screen. I'll click next. And this is where we set up our connections. So we're going to go from SQL Server to Oracle. Go ahead and click next. Now, here's where you can either select row count data. A lot of people that have, say, 1 billion rows or something really obscure where it's going to take a long time for to validate all that information would use row count just to do sort of a smoke test to make sure that from source to target, the correct amount of rows have been transferred over. But I prefer to do data because it's going to check field to field the exact data. And we'll go next.
But if there are transformations, you could just do row count if you know the row count is supposed to be correct, and it'll give it to you, right?
That's correct. I'll go ahead and select my schemas that I would like to use today, which will be those two, and click next. And now it'll give me all the tables that are in those schemas, and I could select which tables I would like to create query pairs for. I'll go ahead and draw all these over, except for this one. Decided not to test that one today. And on the right-hand side, I'll go ahead and select all the tables for the target side. And now I just want to make sure from left to right that they line up correctly, because we're just going to create a query pair with a source query and a target query. So we got that matches that, that matches that. We're all good until down here, for some odd reason, they weren't lined up, which is common in database technology. So we'll just go ahead and move these to the correct lineup. And we'll move that down there. I think we're just about there. Details, and we're good. Okay, I'll go ahead and click next. Okay, so now I'm going to create a validation name, and that validation name is going to be used for the wizard to go ahead and create a folder name in my design library, also a test suite in my scheduling module, and all the query pairs for each table, for the two tables that I selected, or for all 11 tables, but the source and target queries will go into the query pairs. So we'll just call this webinar and click next. And then we can go ahead and confirm this information and make sure everything's correct. And I'll go ahead and say create. So you can imagine it created 11 of 11 quite quickly. It creates hundreds or 200s or 300 just as quickly. In fact, we had a client recently who had about 560 tables that needed to be created. And within 30 minutes, he had all his query pairs he needed created and ready to execute. Go ahead and look. You can see that my webinar folder was created. I can go in there, and you'll see that all my query pairs are created, and we can go ahead and drill into one of those and see that, indeed, from what we did in the wizard, created this query pair for us with the correct connection information. We can go over to the scheduling module and see that our test suite was created. With all the query pairs already in there, ready to execute. To save some time, I pre-did this already, so the same thing was done earlier. I can go ahead and take a look and see that those are the same. Now I can go over to the run dashboard, and you'll notice I had this before, but I've already executed it for us, and I can go ahead and drill into those query pairs. You could see that one actually failed of the 11 tables. So the table-to-table comparison for the purchaser spec table has failed. I can click on that, and we can take a look at why. There's the source information, again, the target, and the failures tab. And in this particular case, I'm going to do the side-by-side view. I'll do a little filter, get the primary keys matching up left to right, and we could just scroll over and see that the Chinese street addresses, for some odd reason, did not come over from SQL Server to Oracle correctly and could be flagged as a potential defect. Obviously, the data is not correct, so there's an issue there. I'll close out of that. I think that's all I have, unless there's some questions.
Just to let me cancel this. If you're doing the data migration, for any non-transformation, you can either use the straight data compare and or the row count compare wizard. And for transformations, you're going to write custom SQL to handle the transformations.
That's correct. But what's very nice about the data wizard is that it actually goes into the schema and pulls the table name for you, so you don't have to go look in a mapping document or anything like that to figure out the exact syntax for that table.
Right, and I know somebody wrote in, one of their questions was, can I just pick columns in the table and compare them instead of the table to table? And our answer is that's on the drawing board and should be out sometime this year. But for now, how would you handle that? If you just want to do columns, would you create them this way with the wizard and then go in and customize them?
Yeah, I would definitely, especially if I had more than 3 or 4 query pairs to create from different tables, I would use the wizards to go ahead and create that stub, and then I would go in and just add the columns that I needed the column, save that query pair, and execute it.
So how long does it take to do a migration in some of the projects you've worked on? I guess it depends on the number of transformations.
It really depends on the transformations. The one that we just did recently, 80% of the migration was straight table to table with the exact same columns, the exact same data. So we were able to create the 80% using the wizards almost instantly.
So now what happens in a situation if you're going from, say, Oracle to SQL Server and the data types are different, so that you got to go in and customize them, right?
Then you would have to do some customization, that's correct.
Is that how you normally handle it?
Yes.
I think Laura has a bunch of questions now. Is that correct, Laura?
Yeah.
So I'll get out of this seat and Laura pop in.
All right. So thank you, Bill and Chris. And I hope that that presentation was helpful for all of you. I know that you guys had a lot of questions, and there are still some coming in. So I'm going to take them one by one. The first question is, what about existing data migration solutions like IBM InfoSphere? Are you able to integrate into an end-to-end solution like that?
I'm not sure. Can you repeat the question, please?
I think that the question is, can we use their ETL SQLs already?
No, I mean that's we thought about doing that, but from a QA perspective, you really want kind of two eyes on the mapping document. You want two different teams creating that SQL. I know it's additional work, but we just feel that if you're using the developer's SQL or anything or code or whatever, you're not really testing their work. They're just you're just redoing the same work they had, so you're not going to find any defects.
Okay. The next question is, mapping and transformation seem to be covered, but what about lookup? Perhaps I need to turn a product ID into a product name in the source database by looking it up during the ETL process. Can query search support testing for that?
Yeah, generally lookups are in a table. If there's lots of items, I would recommend that you would look up through that table, so you'd end up doing a join through that table and pulling that lookup up. That's how I've seen it done, in many projects. If there's only 3 or 4 items, you could simply use a case statement like I did on our example during the demo.
Okay, thanks, Chris. The next question is, do I need a different query pair for each row in the requirements spreadsheet? For example, you just showed the SQL for one row in the spreadsheet. So if I have 50 or 100 columns in my data, how many query pairs do I need to define?
You could have 1 query pair or 100 query pairs. It's totally the way you want to design your SQL. I tend to do it, 1 column per query pair, but obviously, if there was hundreds and hundreds of columns, you may get overwhelmed with too many query pairs, so you'd probably reduce that down by doing it by, table. You could do 10 columns at a time, but there's no real restriction on how many columns you could test per query pair.
Okay, another question is, what if the data between the source and target changes? For example, there is a type change across the systems, but the actual data is the same. For example, string to date. How is that handled?
That's handled in the SQL. So the query itself would have to be, you would have to create a cast to cast them to the same data type. As query search will flag that as an error.
Okay, and the next question is, sometimes the source data is not quite as clean as we would like. Is there a way to tell the tool to compare the columns if there's the data in the target column, but ignore the mismatch if the target column is blank or meets a specific pattern like question mark, question mark, question mark, question mark?
Yeah, I mean, again, you have to handle all those type of exceptions within the queries themselves. There is some built-in functionality within query search to help with that kind of stuff, and I'll just go ahead and go into a query pair. And if you notice, when I came to the screen, there were some extra options, and one of the options is to ignore mismatches, whether it be on the source or target for your query pair.
You show the other ones too, Chris, that are in there?
Absolutely. So key column definition, that's if you want to, and we actually, best practice is to define a key, gives performance enhancement on query search. It will run quite a bit faster, and there's also row duplicate handling. So if you have extra duplicate rows on the source or target, we handle that as well.
Okay, the next question is, hold on, I just lost it. The next question is, can you connect to mainframe data?
If it's JDBC compliant, we'll be able to connect to mainframe.
Well, typically what people will do with the mainframe is we'll export it to a file. So whether it's delimited or if it's fixed width, we can handle it. It doesn't matter what the delimiter is.
That's correct.
Okay, the next question is, can this program migrate to Microsoft.pdw? Microsoft.pdw?
Yeah, that's a good question. We have to look into that a little bit more. We'll get back to you on that.
Okay. The next question is, there are cases that multiple separate database information must be merged into a single database. It seems like this would be difficult to handle in this tool.
Yeah, we have clients that had similar situations to that, and there's some workarounds that we have, so feel free to reach out to us, and we could share those with you.
Okay, I have a question. Does query search provide version control for the query pairs?
Yeah, absolutely. I can demonstrate that. There's a history tab for each query pair. If I go into the history tab, well, this one's not very interesting because there's only one version, but let me go into one that does. So as you can see, it saves every single version. If I wanted to go back in time and take a look, we can go ahead and take a look. So this query pair at one time was quite simple until we added some transformation logic to it. So it keeps history of all changes. Every time you click save, it saves a history of a version.
Okay. I don't know if this is a question. It says should allow maintaining consistency with corresponding versions of mapping documents.
Versioning the mapping versus the query pair.
Well, there's a field for mapping over to your mapping document, but they're not integrated together as of yet. It's something that we're thinking about for the future.
Okay, and I learned what PDW is. It's Parallel Data Warehouse from Microsoft.
Again, we'll look into it and get back to you.
I'm sure if it has a JDB connection.
We could hit it, yeah.
Okay, the next question is there a way to compare XML to databases?
Yeah, that's something we're working on actually right now in a very near release. We'll have direct connect to XML. Currently, our workaround is to import that into a database and then do database to database.
But we're coming out with the JDBC driver for XML too, right?
That's correct. In fact, we just recently had a client that needed direct XML connect, and we were able to do it. We're just not officially releasing that until shortly.
Okay. Do you know what version of query search was used for this presentation?
3.3.16.
Okay.
I'll be sure I was right.
He's checking.
I'm right.
Okay. 3.3.16 is the version that's used for this presentation. The next question is, what is the minimum hardware requirement to install the product? What is involved, and the learning curve, for example, any training?
Yeah, query search can be installed on just about everything. The minimum requirements are real minimal. I don't have those off the top of my head.
I know them.
Go ahead, Bill.
Any Windows box with, I think, 8 gig RAM for production for a trial, any Windows box will do. And it installs in about 10 minutes. And it comes with a tutorial, so you can walk right through it. We got a 15-day free trial download. So I would strongly encourage you to do it. You could also install a Linux box. For production, depending on how much data you're going to be testing against and how aggressive you're going to go after it, is going to determine what kind of hardware setup you want. You can either put it all in one box with lots of memory and CPU. You could, put it on multiple boxes because you can distribute it. It just depends on how much data you're going to test. But really, you could run it right now on any Windows box with 4 gigs of RAM, just as a trial. And then you can sample it and see how it does against drift data. And if you don't have data that you can connect to, you can go against our tutorials, which are great. It takes about, how long, Chris, is it a tutorial?
It takes anywhere from 45 minutes to an hour, depending how fast you go.
And you pretty much see everything?
That's correct. There's also a built-in setup wizard, which I just put up on the screen. So it helps you through installing additional agents, creating connections, and it has some links to some of our help sections as well as video tutorials.
That is correct. We have another question. We also need to test a stored procedure extract after data migration. Does the product support comparison of stored procedure output?
If it's outputted in any form that we can connect to, such as CSV, flat file, or Excel, or can be put into that format, yes.
Okay, and it looks like that is all of the questions that we have for today.
Okay, great. Thank you, Laura.
Yeah, so thank you, everyone, for your participation.
Great. I just wanted to remind everybody that we have videos on the website. There's file download. If you don't want to download it, you can do a trial in the cloud in a virtual machine. So go on our website, all the information's there. Feel free to play around with it.
Yep, and I'll be sending you a follow-up email with a link to the recording and our contact information and the slide presentation. So if you have any additional questions between now and then, feel free to reach out. You can reach out directly to me since you all have my email address. I was the one that was communicating with you about this webinar in the first place. So we give you 8 minutes back of your time today. So have a great rest of the day, everyone. Thanks for joining.